Hi, I'm Nisha DeGaring, host of Good Things Utah, and I've been a longtime supporter of Todd's Beliefcast. I hope you find inspiration in the courageous stories shared by the amazing people Todd features on his show. The guests serve as shoulders for us to stand on, allowing us to see a little further and cultivate belief in oneself. Remember, you have the dignity and power to change. I encourage you to keep striving and believing in yourself. Enjoy today's podcast.
We are back, everybody. This is Todd Sylvester, the host of the Beliefcast. Today, we have an amazing guest today for you guys whose story is not just about surviving trauma. It's about healing into wholeness and leading from that place. Amber Washington is an author, speaker, and the founder of Whole Heals, a trauma-informed leadership and workplace training company. Her memoir, Whole, My Journey to Capital W, shares her lived experience with childhood sexual abuse, resilience, and the long road toward voice, safety, and true healing. Amber helps individuals and organizations understand how trauma and neurodivergence shape the way we show up in life and work, and how awareness can create strong leaders, healthier cultures, and a more human workplace. So Amber, welcome to the Beliefcast.
Thank you so much for having me, Todd.
Yeah, you bet. I'm real excited to have you on because I know a large portion of my audience needs to hear your story today. I really believe that. I am convinced of that. And so what I love about you, just right off the gate here, is that you are so vulnerable about sharing what you've been through. Yeah. And I think that's what gives you so much power. Yeah. What do you think of that?
Isn't it interesting that that's where so much power can come from?
Yeah.
And we spend so much of our life hiding from that and,
right.
and worrying about what other people are going to say or think, and being so afraid of the what if and the story and of us.
Right.
And then when you lean into that, oh my gosh.
Yeah. Well, you do a fantastic job at sharing your story. Very inspirational. We have some mutual friends that got us connected, so I'm so grateful for them. Why don't we start off, Amber, just so those who don't know you, just a little bit about where you grew up, maybe a little bit about your childhood.
Yeah, absolutely. So I grew up here in Orem.
Okay.
In the bubble. And that's important, right? I think that's important when we talk about, because it gives context to the culture and a lot of what happened. So I grew up, I'm an 80s baby, spent all of my life in Orem until I was about 19 years old, and then decided to venture out and moved out to Philadelphia.
Well, that's a big change from Orem to Philly.
Oh my gosh. And you know what's so funny about that is I just remember thinking like, oh, I've tried alcohol. I've smoked a little bit of weed. Like I cuss, like I'm fine. I can go and I can be in a different culture. It's not going to shock me. And yet just things like, so I went out to nanny and the family that I was living with, I just remember he would smoke a cigar every night after dinner. She would have wine with dinner. Yeah. And those little things that are so normal around the rest of the world, I didn't grow up with that. And so I found myself, even though I thought that I had, popped that bubble, like really realizing the way that the rest of the world lives.
Yeah. How was that move to Philly? Like at such a young age, you're going to nanny. That's not an easy job, obviously. No. I mean, how was that experience overall?
It was interesting, and it didn't last terribly long because I ended up getting pregnant. Okay. But I'm the oldest of 5 kids. And one of the things in having a conversation with my oldest son about 6 months ago, I kind of unlocked this piece of this journey, right? And realized that I've never not been taking care of somebody, so I was the oldest of 5. My mom did daycare. I started babysitting from a very young age. So left the house at 19 years old to nanny for 18-month-old triplets.
Man.
Yes. Yeah. That was an adventure in and of itself. Met my boy's father while I was out there and, ended up getting pregnant just months into being out there. Yeah. And I ended up coming home, I think around 6 months. I was terrified. I wasn't ready to be away from my family and raise a child and all of that. So I ended up coming home. But that baby is just about to turn 24 years old now. Wow. And so, I've never not been taking care of somebody.
Well, you have some good looking kids.
Oh, thank you so much.
And I know they love you so much. I've seen videos of them talking about you. Oh my gosh, it brought me to tears.
That's bringing me to tears now. Three young men. I'm raising 3 young men, and
they're amazing.
Yeah, they are. Thank you.
Well, they definitely honor you and obviously look up to you in so many ways. So we're both here crying now.
Already.
Already.
We're 5 minutes in.
Well, there's a lot to talk about here, and let's get right to it. I mean, you've written a book about, the things that you've gone through, and you speak about the things you've been through, and you help so many people because of that. And that's why I love what you're doing, because unfortunately this happens to so many people.
Too many, yeah.
So whatever you're comfortable with sharing, just tell us kind of what you've been through. Those who don't know your story, would you please kind of just open up and kind of share what you're comfortable with us?
Yeah, absolutely. It was right before my 9th birthday when I went to my parents and disclosed that my grandfather had been sexually abusing me. And there's 2 pieces of this puzzle that I've yet to really put together. And this first one is one I never will. And I get asked quite often, when did the abuse start? I don't know. Yeah. In my bones, it's 6-7 years old. Yeah. What I do know for a fact is it was right before my 9th birthday that I disclosed.
Okay.
And I write very, very vividly about what that night was like. And I have a very vivid memory of even where I was standing. What my sisters were doing, my parents were getting ready to attend a temple session that evening. Yeah. And we had a babysitter, and she had canceled at last minute. And so I hear my parents, talking about it, and then on the phone. Yeah. And I heard one of my parents say, let's call Walt. Nobody was available. Yeah. Let's call Walt. And I froze. The abuse was getting more brazen. Very fortunately, I feel I only have one very vivid incident or very, very vivid memory of an incident that happened. But I knew that if he came into our home and was alone with me for several hours at night, that it was going to be worse. And I just couldn't. And, I found a strength that no child should ever have to find to begin with, but that most don't, because it's not because children are weak. It's because children love the people that they're surrounded by.
Exactly. Yeah.
And, I was told, and we're pleasers, from a very young age. We're raised to please the adults and the authority in our life. Yeah. And so I was told that if I told anybody that I would get in big trouble, and I was born with a stubbornness and a resilience that I'm so grateful for. And my mom actually wrote the foreword to this book, and she talks about that. And then I talk a little bit more about that conversation with my mom, in my adult years, and how impactful just that conversation and that realization was, because she had three daughters within, 3.5 years of each other. And she tells it that when I was probably around 2, she was getting really frustrated with me, losing her patience. Mm-hmm. And she just remembers after one extra long day, just kind of sitting with herself in reflection and having the thought come to her, like, maybe she needs this, maybe she needs this. And there's no way at that point in time that she could have known how bad I was going to. And so she, from that moment on, worked to nurture that and tried, instead of trying to stifle it. And I thank my mom. Right? Yeah, I thank my mom for that to this day, because again, I was able to tell my parents.
What a brave thing. I mean, you're 9 years old. Yeah. You froze when you heard the name. You froze with the situation, but yet you somehow mustered up the courage to say something. Yeah. That does say a lot about you. And you're right. Kids aren't afraid. Kids are resilient. Kids are strong. Kids are powerful. And you just tapped into that. Yeah. You just had that moment of like that courage that I need to say something. And well, thankfully you did. How was the response? I mean, if you don't mind me asking.
No, of course. And this is a big part of what I write about, because I'll preface this by saying that so much of the damage that was done to me was from after disclosure, post disclosure. Wow. I told my parents, they left that night. They still went to the temple, and I hold a lot of grace for the reason, now I understand why they did that. but it doesn't lessen the impact on me
Yes.
of disclosing and then being left alone, for hours, especially as such a little girl. So the next day, my parents went to confront my grandfather, and he initially denied it and claimed to just be rubbing my belly, which is a huge part of the grooming process, and this is something that I talk about because a big part of this story is education and awareness.
Right.
So grooming, adults groom other adults. They groom everybody around them.
Yeah.
And so rubbing my stomach was a very normal part of the affection, and things that he did in front of my parents and other people. And so initially he denied it, and they came back to me, and this is such fragmented memories that I have of this.
Yeah.
But they came back to me and said, "Are you sure?" And this is another moment where I could have been silenced, and again, somehow I found the strength to stick to what I had said. And the crazy part of this story, there's so many freaking crazy parts, right. But one of the crazy parts of this story is that then he admitted it. He admitted it. And so my parents ended up going to the police, and he was charged. I don't know what the initial charges were.
Right.
What I do know is that my next very vivid memory is going to the Orem City Courthouse that was, connected to the public library, and the public library was a place that I knew as a little kid. Everything else, all the other parts of that government building were foreign and adult.
Sure.
And I just remember the walls and the floor were this ugly brown, right? And and it was like covered in epoxy. And so our footsteps were so loud, just echoed as we're walking down the hall. And it's just my dad and I. And so my parents have told me, that the judge has asked me to be present in the event, that he wants to speak with me. So my dad and I go, and we're sitting outside of the courtroom. And I just remember being so little that my feet are not even touching, the floor at this point.
Yeah.
And now understanding what anxiety is,
sure.
I was filled with it.
Yeah. Absolutely.
My dad got called in. So my dad goes in, leaves me alone on this bench by myself, comes back out and says, "Okay, let's go." I didn't find out until I was 33 years old that my dad went into that courtroom to ask the judge to take mercy on his father.
Oh, wow.
So my grandfather was offered a plea in abeyance, which he accepted, 1 year of probation, and was court ordered to do therapy. And what I've been told is that therapy was completed through his bishop.
Oh,
so,
wow.
And a year to the date, when I started writing this book back in 2022, I wanted to have as much information as I possibly could. I mentioned, there's two pieces of this puzzle that are still missing. The one that I know that I'll never ever be able to find. But I got court records. I asked for journals. I talked to people that were willing to talk, which wasn't very many in the family. But I just got as much information as I could so that I'm being very factual. So one of the things that I discovered was my mom had kept a note that my great grandmother was like meticulous with dates and notes and whatnot. But my mom had kept this little note that my great grandmother had kept that said, "On this date, Walt proposes to Mary." So my grandparents divorced when, everything happened.
Okay.
On the day that he was released from his probation, he proposed to my step grandmother.
Oh, wow.
And within 2 to 3 months, they were married. We continue to see my grandfather. And that was a huge part of the damage that was done afterwards.
Yeah, I hear that a lot where other people have been in this situation when it's a family member and they kind of go through the same process and they kind of just get a slap on the wrist. And then all of a sudden we're at a family party again and there they are.
Yeah.
And no one's realizing what it's doing to you, the person who was abused. I mean, I can't even imagine what's going through your mind.
And as when you're that young,
yeah,
you don't and you shouldn't have the ability to say, what the hell's going on? And I did say that in so many different ways. I was punished either with the silent treatment or I was yelled at. If I asked questions or if I tried to talk about it, my dad was not and is still not receptive to that. So, and one of the things that I was told, in my adult years is that at the time, therapists, that was the recommendation, like just keep the family together.
Yeah.
That's the best thing because I was the only one in the family that had been abused, and so the approach was very much, we're going to send her to therapy, and I resisted that. I had to have cycled through a dozen therapists between, age 9 to, I don't know, I think I was 15, 16 before they finally said, okay, we're done fighting you on this.
Yes.
And then didn't go back to therapy until I was 33 years old.
Wow.
But yeah, just let's keep the family together. Let's be very normalized. Oddly enough, and this is the beauty of story. This is the beauty of a healing journey, is it doesn't ever end. There's no ending to this, and the more that I talk about this, the more things unlock.
Wow.
I was on TikTok. Well, I opened a TikTok account in 2022 to start sharing my story.
Share, yeah.
And so when I got onto TikTok, my sister has mentioned something about our step grandmother who married, my grandfather, having a TikTok account, and that she had a video that had like gone semi-viral or something. And I was like, what? So I go and I look, and one of her grandkids has created this TikTok account where it's called Grandma Walks, and it's advice. She's got some health problems. She's really near death at this point. But it's just him having different conversations with her, which, for a lot of people is very wholesome, and there's nothing wrong with that. And for me, it triggered the shit out of me.
I can imagine. Yeah.
And I was like, hold on, because this woman denied what happened to me, the entire time that she was in the picture. And at one point, I mean, actually 2 different times I tried to have a conversation, and she just told me she didn't want to know. She didn't want to know. She wanted to remember Walt the way that she knew him. She didn't want to know anything. And even at that point, there's no way that she didn't know. But to find, so I find this TikTok account. So anyhow, as I'm doing all of this, and I'm writing, and I'm still processing and unlocking different things.
Yeah.
I was trying to put something together. I don't even remember what at this point, but just a couple of weeks ago, and I was like, oh, you know what? Let me go grab one of those videos. And so I hadn't been on that account in 3-4 years at this point.
Okay, yeah.
So I go, and she's passed. She passed away in 2022, ironically enough, as I started to write this book.
Yeah.
And so I see this video, and it's a memorial to her. And it starts out by asking her, if you were, what's the one piece of advice that you would leave for people? And she says, if you can make somebody else happy, do that. And again, for anybody else, that's going to be so wholesome. And for me, I'm thinking, do you have any idea what you did to me?
Yeah.
You erased my existence. You erased my trauma. You erased my pain. And so I'm watching, and even now as I'm talking about it, my stomach is just so sick, but I'm watching this go, and, so then it gets to the part where she's talking about Walt being the love of her life, and there's pictures of them together, and a lot of pictures of her and her kids and him. And then there's a picture of me. They put a picture of our family, 14-year-old me, and the sick irony in this is I am front and center, of this entire family. I am front and center, and that damn near broke me.
I bet. I can imagine. Wow.
So it's crazy that something that happened so long ago, and something that I have truly done a ton of work on, had that happened, 2, 3, 4, especially 10 years ago, I'm afraid to know what actually would have happened.
Yeah, right.
But it's it's quite amazing what happens and just the impact that something like this has.
Yeah. And, you know, I hear this a lot too with the clients I deal with as well, where when there's no accountability, your pain has been minimized, if not totally forgotten, or at least ignored.
Yeah.
I mean, what that does to the person, it's almost like, am I the crazy one here?
Oh,
it's almost
absolutely.
Right. Am I,
Yes.
What's going on here? And it's so interesting how people can just move aside, ignore, discredit, whatever you want to call it. And so it's no wonder that even this many years later, you're having these experiences where, and you even said it, most of the pain came after you disclosed, right?
Yeah.
Because again, being minimized, I mean, there's not probably what I hear from my other people who have been through similar, I hear this all the time, and tell me if you relate, where you never feel more alone in those moments. Like I am just
absolutely.
Alone.
Yeah.
Like even from my own immediate family, where
yes, especially from my own immediate
and they're
family.
trying to, because they want to just like, let's just smooth the waters.
Yes.
Everything's gonna be fine.
Yeah.
Let's just smile and move forward. We love each other. Let's do whatever. And what they don't realize is what that's doing to someone such as yourself who's been abused.
No.
So that's why I think I love that you're speaking up, in the sense that there's so many people who have been silenced, who I think would look at you and go, man, she is so brave, you know? And, you know, and you have done that. Obviously you have built a business and you're trying to help people.
Yeah.
Business is even the wrong word. It's more of, you're an advocate and you're out there.
It's a movement.
It's a movement. Sorry. Thank you.
No, that's fine. But
there's a better word.
I mean, even I've had to say that.
It's a better word.
You're right. Yeah.
So you've written this book. You've
Yeah.
got it sitting next to you. Talk about this amazing book that you've put together, and kind of like, what would someone get if they picked up your book today? What would be the message to them?
Yeah, the message is to share your story, is to get it out, and that's a big part of this movement, right? That is a big part of the business, and the all of it is the power of story, the power of voice, and the destruction when we keep it inside of us, because the body keeps the score. That book changed my life.
It's a great book.
And led to a big part, you know, of my ability to write and to share.
Wow.
For me, I recognize that I do have power and strength, and I have the ability to be able to share my story verbally, you know, through my book, through speaking about it. But not everybody is in a safe place to do that. Not everybody has the same type of personality.
Sure.
And I don't fault anybody for that. That's something that I really, really want to emphasize, because just because you can't verbally share your story or even share it with other people does not make you weak.
Right.
It makes you human. You know,
it's a good way to put it.
Trauma manifests in so many different ways.
Yeah.
And you and I can experience the exact same thing. If you've read The Body Keeps the Score, you know he opens with that car accident, right? Same trauma, different reactions. We don't get to choose what that looks like for ourselves.
Exactly.
So I really put a lot of emphasis on getting your story out in whatever way we can. And so part of what I'm doing with this movement is I've created Whole Heals as the company. And I've created, it exists with two branches, the Voice Collective and the Leadership Collective. And the Voice Collective is story. It's reclamation through voice. And that is my book, that is speaking engagements, and that's creating these community events. Yeah, absolutely.
Right?
Any platform. I'm so grateful for it.
Sure, yeah.
But that's creating these community events where we come together and we share and we listen, because sharing stories is one thing, but we have to have people that are willing to listen and willing to hold that space.
Yeah.
You know, and the impact, the healing that is done together is unlike anything I have ever experienced in my life.
Wow, I get chills when you just said that, because I've watched a lot of your videos of where you have spoken, and just, again, seeing your vulnerability, you get emotional. Yeah. I love that about you. And then the crowd gets emotional, and it's like there's that connection. And I think that's what you're really, really good at, is you connect with people so well. Even if they haven't been through what you've been through, you connect with them. Because we all know what it feels like to feel lonely and pushed aside and not heard and those kind of things. And I think you do a fantastic job. And there's a beautiful saying that, we're never more fully alive than when we're connected.
Oh my gosh.
And I think that's
So
what
true.
you do so well. And that's obviously part of your healing, I'm sure, as well.
Oh, absolutely.
So the things you're doing, you talk a lot about reclaiming your voice. And ultimately it's, yes, you're doing all these things to share, but is it also fair to say when you say reclaiming your voice, it's you getting to that place where I'm going to speak the truth and I'm not backing down anymore? Is that fair to say?
Yeah. So many cuss words after that. Yes. It's
you mother.
Well, and it's just hell yeah. And that's the mild one. Like, absolutely. It is, it really is. It's me giving the proverbial bird to everybody who has ever tried to silence me. And that is people, that is systems.
Yeah.
That is myself. Because, we talked about the damage that was done and the gaslighting, right?
Yes.
The way that I handled all of that was I internalized that. So if I'm being treated like my trauma wasn't supposed to affect me, I internalized that. And I've talked about this before. I wanted to write this book when I was 15 years old. But at that time, it was more from the mindset of like, look at me. This didn't affect me. Like, I'm a survivor, And so I want to help other people be able to do that. In hindsight, I would have done a ton of damage had I taken that approach at that, with anybody else. And I probably did. But I did a lot of damage to myself because I was never allowed to be a victim.
Right.
And if I can't be a victim, how can I truly be a survivor? And so the way that I handled all of that was when, I grew up LDS. I grew up in a very high demand religion. And so not only did I have the sexual abuse that was impacting my self-esteem and, my mental health and all of the things that it should, but then I have parents who I'm grounded all the time. There's just this impossible standard that everybody is supposed to meet to begin with. But when you are exhibiting natural trauma responses and behaviors that are not being given the grace of being that, what it is that you're the problem. You're the bad kid. And so I lived in this perpetual state of I'm bad. Yeah. And so I just kind of took that and I owned it. I'm like, I'm just going to own my shit, and if I'm the bad kid, then I'm going to be the bad kid.
Yeah.
And that did so much damage because then that led, to me robbing the place that I worked. That's the story that I talk about, being 18 years old and going to jail. And that bled into relationships and chasing validation and love from boys and then men that were not any healthier than I was either,
Yeah. Wow. Thanks for sharing that. That is deep, right? I mean, seriously, I want to share something with our listeners. Okay. And it's something you said. And I'm going to choke up already. It's a post you did on Instagram, and I think it was your most recent one. And I'm going to read it. And then I want to hear your thoughts on why you wrote this. Okay. I think I have an idea of why you wrote it, but I want to obviously hear it from you.
Okay.
And I'm going to read it. It might take a second. So listeners, buckle up. You've arrived when the haters introduce themselves. You had me right at that. I was like, wow. I mean, we could make a t-shirt out of that. I expected pushback. I just didn't expect it to come from another woman. There's an irony in fighting your way into comfort inside your own body, only to be told by someone else that you should shrink it. Here's what I know. You will never find me on another woman's page tearing her down. Not for her body, not for her voice, not for her confidence. I grew up hating my body. I know what that prison feels like. And I will never volunteer to build it for someone else. Body positivity isn't pretending health doesn't matter. It's understanding that shame has never healed a single human being. Beautifully said. You can be thin and miserable. You can be fat and thriving. You can be fit and broken. You can be soft and strong. The goal isn't perfection. The goal is gratitude for the body that carries you through this. I want to take a moment to express my heartfelt gratitude to the incredible sponsors of the Beliefcast podcast. First, Craig from Craig Swap and Associates. If you need an attorney, he's your guy. Trustworthy, compassionate, always there when you need him most. Next, Wasatch Recovery, the greatest university on the planet, transforming lives one day at a time. Sandy from Minky Couture, the creative genius behind the most comfortable blanket you'll ever wrap yourself in. Comfort like no other. Special thanks to the award-winning pianist Paul Cardall for his beautiful music that brings inspiration to every episode. This life. Mine wakes up at 3 a.m. to work. Mine shows up for my kids. Mine stands on stages and speaks truth. Mine exists in public without apology. And if that makes someone uncomfortable, that discomfort doesn't belong to me. To the woman watching, especially the younger ones, to the women watching, especially to the younger ones, I hope you'll see that confidence is not body type. It's a decision. Man. To my critics, I see you. And I hope one day you experience the freedom of liking yourself as much as you dislike me. Because when you heal, we don't project, we uplift. And I'm not shrinking. Wow. I read that. I cried my eyes out, and I'm trying not to cry right now. Thank you for letting me read that. Yeah. Share obviously that was a very powerful post. I felt your words, and I felt your confidence, and I felt your vulnerability.
There's so much of this journey that I had to go through to get to a place where I could speak publicly. Yeah. My weight is something that I have struggled with my entire life, to the point of at one point topping out at nearly 350 pounds. And so much of that I have used as a security blanket. I've lost weight and then I've gained it again, and I've lost weight and I've gained it again. And I've been able to maintain weight loss for the last 3 years. And I am on a GLP-1 right now. That absolutely has changed my life. But I also know that I have worked really hard to let go of that security blanket, to be in a place where I can show up with the body that I'm in, with fat and cellulite and anything, right? It is not the standard of perfection. But for me, this is a body that has not quit when it could have, when it has been so abused. And this body gave me 3 young men. 3 young men. That is not an accident. No. That I have boys. For sure. That I have men in my life that will protect me at all costs, that have shown me what unconditional love is, and who I get to help shape. That I get to send out to this world as compassionate, understanding young men who know about consent, who know the damage that exists when you physically, sexually, emotionally harm a woman. And I also talk to them about their right and ability to consent, and what that looks like. Right. And anyway, that post actually was just posted last night and came after a couple of days of me just sitting on a comment that I received from a woman who came to my page to tell me that I have my boobs out because I want to be a porn star, and it was meant to drop me down. And I absolutely understand what the meaning is behind that. Yeah. And for a moment I thought, okay, that's going to happen, right? When you put yourself out publicly, and I've known that, and I have thick enough skin at this point to be able to handle those things. Yeah. And I thought, okay, maybe I ignore it. Maybe I block her, maybe I ignore it, maybe I don't say anything. And then I thought, no, I'm responding, because these comments exist to silence me. Exactly. And no, that is what I said. No, this is the power of my voice. And not only am I going to stand up for myself, which I am doing on stages and as loudly as I possibly can, but I've always been somebody who has stood up for others. Yeah. And so when my nieces see a comment like that, or some of my friends who are struggling with their body or confidence or anything.
Sure.
When you see a comment like that, and guess what? My army showed up. So that's been a pretty cool part of it too. But when you see a comment like that, I need you to see what my response is. And it's not attacking her physically. It's calling out the hypocrisy. Exactly. It's calling out the intention behind it. Yeah. And at the end of the day, I hope that this woman finds a way to heal. And like I said, to like herself as much as she apparently dislikes me. But you're either going to love me or I'm going to make you really uncomfortable. And I'm okay with both.
I love that. Wow. I'll tell you that when I read that just hit me like a ton of bricks. I already had everything planned for today. I really did. I've been working on this for a couple weeks. And I just, this morning I had some time and I'm checking your Instagram account and I'm like, oh, she got a new post. And I was like, what? I got to print this off.
I love that.
So
I love that we've been able to have that conversation too, because it is, and you're public enough. Anybody, if you have a public facing social media, that is inevitable. Trolls are inevitable, but I'm not willing to just ignore. And I had some people say, and of course it's all well-meaning. Don't let the haters get to you. Don't give them any space, any of your energy. And I say respectfully, I'm going to give them some. Sure. And here's why.
Do you know who David Goggins is?
Yes. Yeah. Can't Hurt Me is one of the first books that I listened to on audio.
I love it. Well, he has a saying. He says, "A hater, you'll never find a hater doing better than you."
Oh, absolutely not. Nope.
Because again, and it's funny. I'm pretty out there in the public as well, and I do get comments from time to time of just you're like, where is this coming from, man? And I'll be honest with you, my first initial response is like, oh, that hurt.
It does.
Man,
it does.
And a lot of times it's comments from people I know even. I'm like going, okay, that stings a little bit. Yes. But again, it's not going to stop me either. I'm going to keep doing what I'm doing. Yeah. And if they want to come talk to me, they know where I'm at. Yeah. Come talk to me. Yeah. Let's talk it out. Let's iron these things out if you'd like. But I love that you speak up. You do have a powerful voice.
Thank you.
And I think you're going to give a lot of women, especially the younger ones, who may be in that position where they need to say something they haven't yet, that because they heard your story, because they read your book, or because they're listening to this podcast, it's like, wow, I need to stand up right now and tap into that courage that's within me because of you. How cool is that?
It is surreal and humbling.
Yeah.
And I already know because I get messages.
Yeah.
I get messages. Sure. I get reviews on Amazon. My book is sitting at 5 stars, which is beautiful. And I also feel like I know that I will have known I've arrived when I get my first 1-star review too. I'm just waiting for that.
Yeah, right.
And that's okay. But it really messes with your mind when you spend the majority of your life hating who you are, and doing everything that you can to hide from that. And whether that is masking and showing, oh, I'm happy and I'm healed and I'm fine. And it wasn't even that I was necessarily faking that, rather than like truly convinced myself along the way that, that I was fine. And then inevitably I would confront a feeling or a person or something, and it would just kind of all explode all over again, and I think that was the point that I reached in 2022 is that I left Utah, moved away to Texas, and was finally in an environment. I was married at the time, and I thought that I was in a very healthy, stable marriage. And that's fine, right? Because me believing that allowed me to do a lot of what I did. So whether that was true or not, it didn't matter. It gave me the ability and the comfort to be able to do, what I was going to do. And ultimately this story was shared at work, and work was for a tech company. The last place that I ever would have expected to share anything.
Yeah, right.
And just, some opportunities and some things opened, and I approached my CEO, who at that time was female, Melissa DiDonato. She's just always going to be one of my heroes, and I said, hey, here's kind of what I want to do. And originally I wanted to speak to a group of high school kids. Yeah. And I said, here's what I'm thinking, but not everybody's story is pretty.
Sure.
And the last thing that I would want to do is to embarrass you, the company, myself. Do you have a couple minutes? Could I kind of tell you more about what I'm thinking? And she said, I regret that I don't have the time, but I'm very supportive of this. Let me put you in touch with our chief communications officer. Mm-hmm. And, that just snowballed into this. The first time that I was able to share my story.
Jeez, that's amazing.
Most of my family actually tuned in, and it was the first time that I was just listened to. They couldn't interrupt me. And so and
they're hearing details that you want to share.
Yeah. Wow. And so it wasn't confrontational. Yeah. We were not in the same room, none of that. But what that did was showed me the power of voice and the power of vulnerability. Yeah. And in fact, April Moe, who hosted the conversation, at the very end of the conversation, she said, vulnerability begets vulnerability. And I will never forget that. And that, that goes right back to where we started with this, is that, right. that really did show me, because then I started to get messages from colleagues, from people that I knew and people that I didn't know, thanking me for sharing my story and then sharing theirs.
Wow.
Then sharing theirs.
Yep.
And that led me to create Share Your Story, which was a platform at work that was supported by work that I hosted. I hosted colleagues, and we talked about divorce. We talked about war. We talked about childhood sexual abuse. We talked about disease. We talked about things that you don't talk about at work. And suddenly we had this community of at least 100 different colleagues that were showing up either to listen and to provide that safe space for the people that were brave enough to share, and that was something that my therapist reframed for me. I said, oh, this is a safe space for sharing. And he said, no, it's a brave space. It's the people listening that create that safe space. And that's another thing that has stuck with me.
Man, beautiful. I love that. And props to the people that you reached out to that still had your back and were willing to open up as well. And, these people in our lives that, just again, and how that opens up just all these other things for you, right?
Yeah.
So you got this amazing book, you got this, this movement you're doing. What's the next thing for you? Do you have something on the docket that you could share with us? Like what's next, or is it just continue promoting this movement?
Yeah, it's the forward momentum, and the momentum has been amazing. Yeah. I had a 9-year career in tech that I just walked away from in September, making making 6 figures, making a very comfortable wage. Yeah. And as a single mom doing that as well, I don't have anybody else. Nobody is funding this except for me, and when I got to the place where I was ready to start writing in my book again, or finishing the book, because after my divorce, I had to take some time and heal through that. So when I got to the place that I was ready to start writing again, I was like, okay, I really do think I'm going to publish this. And so the closer that it got, the more I am sure that it's not just the story. The book is the story. The book tells where this all comes from, and the training, the leadership collective, is the change. It is what comes from the lived experience.
Gotcha.
And so I was seeing this coming, and I was like, okay, we're going to launch the book, and I want to go speak, and I want to share this as far and wide as possible. Yeah. What does my time look like? And as I started to develop this concept of the training and what that was going to look like, I just thought, I need to leave. You know, I believe in this, and I'm a risk taker.
Boy,
you know,
that is a bold move.
When I sat back and I thought, and I had this conversation with myself, okay, Amber, what is the worst thing that could happen? Well, you've been homeless. You've been broke. You've been broken. You've been down and out. You've been at the absolute bottom. What is the worst that can happen? You lose everything and you start over again? Okay, we've been there. We've done that. You got this, girl. You know, so
I love that.
Now, saying that, I'm sitting here about 6 months later, 5 months later, and I'm out of money. You know, this is a very terrifying, I'm in this gap season where all of my money has gone into this and sustained, you know, me living. And now I'm in a spot where I'm like, okay, I'm going to scrape here and I'm going to scrape there. And, you know, my boys are helping as they can. But I just keep telling myself, everything that I am doing is money, right?
Yes.
It is coming back to me. It's building. And every time that I have this conversation, it is well received, you know? And so I've partnered with Generation All and Sapria, which are two phenomenal nonprofits here in the Valley.
I had Chris from Sapria on my show.
I love
He's
Chris.
amazing.
Yeah.
And what a great organization.
Oh
and,
my gosh.
I watched your speech that you gave there at their event, and wow.
Yeah, Sapria,
amazing.
Near and dear to my heart.
Yeah,
you know,
so we've
got those partnerships that are in place. I've
That's
talked
great.
to other nonprofits. I mean, there's just conversations that are happening all over the place, right? And then starting to reach out. The training is ready to go. We are about a week away from signing our first strategic partnership. And so the training was developed in conjunction with my therapist, who is no longer my therapist. That's important to say. You know, we have severed that relationship. And right now he's acting as a consultant. And so I did the outline. Hey, here's what things look like. Here's what we want to do. And with his expertise, he's gone in and he's built that training out.
That's amazing.
And so
that's amazing.
It's such a that's a whole story in and of itself, you know, but I'm just so grateful for him and his support and our ability to work together, and what we are building in this is not just changing our lives, but it is going to change millions and millions of lives, you know. So that's the forward momentum. Gotcha. That's just, okay, we need to have these conversations and I need to get in front of as many people as possible. And when I spread this message of, you know, okay, we're creating trauma-informed, neurodivergent centered training to be delivered into corporations that don't typically see it, which is really every industry, right?
It's everyone.
Yes. But why be trauma-informed? Because when we get to the root of what a problem is, that's where we can prevent it rather than just solve it.
Exactly.
You know, I want to go in and we spend most of our time is at work, you know, in our adult life. That's where the majority of our time is spent. So it's no different than school. We go to school to learn math, to learn science, to learn all of these things. Well, if we go to work and our leadership is saying we're going to learn about what trauma is to begin with, it's not just big T traumas, it's not just sexual abuse and disease, you know, how it shows up in behaviors, and then also how the workplace in and of itself creates so much trauma.
Sure.
You know, toxic stress is very prevalent in a work environment.
For sure.
So what does that look like? How can we prevent it? And then when we are working with people who have a traumatic background, you know, maybe it is childhood sexual abuse, maybe somebody is experiencing domestic violence while they're working for you, you know, death is inevitable. So grief is a big process and it's very traumatic. And yes, we give bereavement, but what do we do beyond that? So what is the language that we are using when we are talking to people? What is the lens that we are looking through? Oprah and Dr. Perry wrote a book called What Happened to You? And just looking through the lens of what happened to you rather than what's wrong with you changes so much.
Everything.
You know, that's my goal. My goal is not to go in and label people. It is to give leaders the ability to look at people through that lens and not through a judgmental lens, you know.
Beautiful.
And if we can do that, we will reduce so much harm. And in a workplace, you know, if I'm talking to a CEO, okay, let's talk dollars because I can prove an ROI.
Yeah.
Your retention is going to stay higher.
Yeah.
Happy, healthy, safe employees will make you so much more money.
Oh,
and
so
cost
true.
you less because you're not going to have the lawsuits and you're not going to have the sick days and things like that. So this is something that, you know, comes from my lived experience, both with my trauma and in the corporate world and just different situations that I faced. And
well, I can tell you light up when you talk about it.
I'm so, yes.
I know. I can just see it. It's beautiful. I love it. And, you know, I have no doubt you're going to make this work and do a lot of good with it. So I have a question for you. If there's someone listening to your voice right now, they've tuned into this episode and they're listening to Amber right now and they are in a dark space. They're in a rough spot. They don't know what to do. What would you tell that one person right now?
There's always a way out. And my advice is to go find your community, because I that just sounds like isolation. You know, when we are in that place, we are isolated, and that doesn't mean that we don't have family and friends.
Right.
But we feel so alone, and I know what that feels like. You know, the title of this book came because I was envisioning myself in the deepest hole that I could dig, you know, and it was at the worst time of my life. I had just been arrested, and there was a restraining order in place, and you know, I didn't know how, but I just saw myself down in this hole. And that's when the title of the book came to me, because I realized, you know, HOLE, and then the W just comes, and I was like, oh, when you add that. So to anybody listening, find your W. Find your W.
Wow. I love it. Great advice. Beautifully said. Will you mind holding up the book to the camera just so those who can see it? If people want to get this book, they want to learn more about what you're doing, support what you're doing, what would be the best way for them to do that?
Yeah, Amber? So the book is actually available on barnesandnoble.com, which
nice.
I'm self-published. So, you know, everything that I have done myself, and it is through the power of community and people giving me a platform. Thank you very much, Todd.
Yes.
You know, that this message is spreading. So barnesandnoble.com, it's also available on Amazon. I do have a website, which is www.wholeheals.com.
Okay.
So that's got all of my information and links there. You can find me on social media. So at The Listening Lamb is my Instagram, or Amber Washington on Facebook. So yeah, there's lots of different ways to get it.
Well, we'll put the links in the show notes so people can get right to it.
Thank you.
I love what you're doing. I honor you. You know, some of my greatest heroes are people like J.C. Dugard and Elizabeth Smart and now you. And I really mean that. Like, you guys are making a difference in this world that needs it so bad. So thank you for being a light. Thank you for being on my show today. I mean, what an honor.
What an honor for me.
Well, it's mutual, because I sit here, I'm the lucky one. I mean, I get to sit with you today and hear this, and I just feel your passion. I feel your love to make a difference in this world, and despite what you've been through. And I really admire that. So thank you for your time.
Yes.
And thank you for being here. And I appreciate, you know, all the good you're doing. We're going to support you the best that we can.
Thank you. And I need to pay that right back, because people like you, who not only provide the platform, but, you know, as you're sitting with tears in your eyes and I'm sitting with mine, you allow me to come in and be very comfortable. You allow me to feel seen and to feel loved. And that is where the ability to be vulnerable comes from. So thank you.
You're welcome. Happy to do it. Thank you so much for making my day.
Yeah, I know. Great way to start a Friday.
I know.
Yeah.
Well, there you go, folks. Man, what an amazing story. Amber Washington. Please reach out to her. Click on the links. Get her book. If you don't need the book, if you don't think you need a book, you know someone that needs the book. Get the book and give it to them. Support her any way that you can. We need to get this message out to as many people as we can. Thank you for supporting me and listening to this week after week. We are cranking. I mean, seriously, we are doing some good out there. It's really crazy. But it's because of you guys tuning in week after week. So thank you so much. Thanks to my sponsors. Without you, I wouldn't be able to do this either. I love you guys. And thanks for tuning in. And one last thank you to Amber. Thanks for being here.
Thank you.
Take care, everybody.